What does a finance guy knows which a operations guy does not know while starting the company, or maybe vice versa?
As I've evolved to become more of an operator through a lot of great experiences and opportunities that people have afforded me, I often say I was kind of cosplaying as a chief operating officer all throughout my career, walking the shop floor and trying to help out where there were gaps. But I think that shift is really that awakening to how much money is hidden in process and not just equipment.
At a high level, what's your goal next?
It's so rewarding too when you talk to our customers. And I got one guy, a pretty big automotive manufacturer, and he said, John, he said, you guys know I have problems before I do, and you show up with the solution. Nobody cares. Work harder. Try to run your business on the worst day, not the average day, because to me, the average day is a lie in a spreadsheet.
An average day is for average people. Welcome everyone to Execution at Scale. As you know, I'm Vikrant Neb, founder of Leanify and Curator. I started this series because, in my opinion, best conversations in this industry always happens over in hallways and over coffee or over a beer sometime, and not exactly on the stage. And here I have John Brooks with me. Do you prefer John or Jonathan? Just to make sure.
Either's fine. John's good.
Awesome. John is CEO of Warehouse on Wheels, or as called WOW, and they provide on-demand mobile storage and logistics solutions for warehouses when they are running out of space. They are right now operating across 37 locations across US, Canada, and Mexico with over 36,000 trailers. And as I've heard, in process of expanding to 100,000 trailers very soon. So very excited for that. And building before building Wow, John actually spent his career in finance and operations and leadership. So I am very excited to chat about how he started the company. I'm really excited. And anything else, like John, you would like to add before we start? I guess.
Well, I guess first, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I'm amazed by the businesses you've built. You're a published author as well. So maybe I should just shut up and listen today because I think you have a lot to offer as well. But I think at its core, why I wanted to have these sort of conversations is because I think operators right now wish they were running their business instead of reacting to it. And so that's the conversation I hope we're going to have today. And I'm excited to get after it, as I like to say.
Wonderful. Thank you for your kind words, John. And as we know, and we this is an opportunity to maybe announce it as well. As you mentioned, you are going to start a podcast too. I mean, you already do a podcast, but that's for
Mhm.
internal team, which will
Yeah.
now have external members. So maybe that's when I can come and speak a lot. But today,
Absolutely. No, we'd love to have you on what we call the wow factor. So we
yeah,
definitely play up the name.
yeah, definitely. Well, and I've been forgetting to announce the series name since last two series. So, so today's episode is why scaling breaks before breaks before even operations try to fix it. Kind of like what you said, John, right? Like, most of the people are in the firefighting mode trying to build things, and I would love to chat about that. But before that, anyone who's listening in can get to know you a little bit. So I'm curious to know that, coming from finance background, CFO background, and then getting into warehousing side of things, like technically warehouse on wheels, still logistics storage. I know it's more trailers, but so what made you what I guess made you get into this first of all, like before we go into anything else?
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to share that story. So I was a customer. I was literally running a warehouse for a small family-owned business that imported trailers from Asia, and we weren't well organized. We didn't have a WMS, and so the trailers were coming in faster than we could unload them. The warehouse was popping at the seams. One night, I looked up after everyone had gone home, and I had rented 150 trailers from a guy who's still a competitor of mine here in Greater Cincinnati, where we're headquartered, and it got me to thinking that that's an interesting business. I understood the unit economics of the asset, started looking at the market and what others were doing, and saw that no one was doing that specific application at scale. And so it started me on a journey. And in 2017, I partnered with a small group of investors and we bought our first platform, two locations, 4,000 trailers. And then as of today, as you mentioned, 37 locations, north of 35,000 trailers from Montreal, Canada to Monterrey, Mexico. We've built the business through 25 add-on acquisitions. We've launched 10 greenfields where we've literally just rolled into a market and opened up shop. And it's been a very blessed and exciting ride. So,
That's wonderful. Like, I always think like the story where I was a customer first and then I started this is the best businesses which I've seen being built because like if you're a customer, you understand all the pain points and really want to solve them, and it somewhat makes you passionate about it too. And kind of like my second company was built because of that as well. So I can definitely sense the excitement here. I have so many questions in my mind. I'm trying to articulate which one should I ask first. So tell me a little bit more. So like most of the uh, people I have talked to in my career, I would say not just this podcast, have been and who are in this logistics space, and when they start, they're more on the like operator background. Like what I mean by that is that either they were working in a warehouse as like in operations or uh, maybe sometimes in sales, but I'm trying to think, but I don't think I've seen anyone from finance background, like starting a company and being a CEO. So like tell me what that is, like how does it feel like and maybe also from the perspective because now you are in operations as well. So like in your opinion, what does that journey looks like, I guess, or what does a finance guy knows which our operations guy does not know while starting the company, or maybe vice versa, however you want to put it.
sure, sure. I think if I had my finance hat on, I was always focused on kind of capital allocation. And as I've evolved to become more of an operator through a lot of great experiences and opportunities that people have afforded me, I often say I was kind of cosplaying as a chief operating officer all throughout my career, walking the shop floor and trying to help out where there were gaps. But I think that shift is really that awakening to how much money is hidden in process and not just equipment. And so that's really, I think, at the heart of what we try to do because ultimately what you'll see with many operations is they run out of time even before they run out of space when they're trying to execute operationally. And so our solution, while it's a trailer, we're actually trying to provide them more time. We're giving them the flexibility, that pressure relief valve. And so that really is what is at the heart of the solution. I being a former customer, I preached to my team, we're going to offer Ritz Carlton service at the Hampton Inn price. So the guys and gals on the front lines that are calling us every day are usually calling us with a bit of chaos or other issues that weren't otherwise planned. And so our response has to be, hello, how may I help you? And get right to solving that problem. Delivering the trailer within 30 minutes or less, like the pizza delivery guys. And so if we do that, we win hearts and minds, we win trust. And so that's really a big part of I think the aha for me as I've transitioned from the sheer finance focus to really being understanding and engaging in the operation side.
That's so wonderful. And like I mean, like all I can say is that when I hear that story, like it's very interesting. Like it's just I have so many questions I'm still trying to articulate. So when you say like you transition from like finance to like more focusing on operations now, so like I guess how was the scaling happening in Wow? Like
Mhm.
because going from 4,000 trailers to 36,000 trailers in short span of time is,
Mhm.
and the kind of service you're offering, because I actually saw a few LinkedIn posts last night that popped up where someone did say that, hey, like, we had our trailers right in front, right on time.
Right.
People even struggle here to get like a pallet delivered on time, like,
Sure.
and it's not easy at all.
Mhm.
So tell me a little bit more about that. Like, what was your strategy, or how did you do it? I guess.
Yeah. So I think I decided early on. Well, let's step back for a minute. So my career basically started at Arthur Anderson, and I was at Arthur Anderson through the collapse. So I like to say I was rearranging the deck chairs in the Titanic as that was all happening and unfolding. And so that was a big shock to me because if you had asked me 25, now 30 years ago, whatever that was, what I wanted to be when I grew up, it would have been a partner at Arthur Anderson. So I was all in. And so that was a bit of a step back. And oddly enough, as fortune would have it, I was working on my MBA at Notre Dame at the time. I was doing it on weekends and nights. And it really opened my eyes to the bigger picture beyond finance. And it started really driving that curiosity for organizational development and operational excellence. And so I leaned into early in the wow build into kind of that organizational development. And what I decided was we were going to build our group in such a way that the local markets would be run by what I literally call a local market CEO. That person, that guy or gal, is going to run that market, say Louisville, Kentucky, Dallas, Texas, in a 150-mile radius. And they're going to make every decision they need to make to hire, to fire, to buy, and to sell in that market. Now, we'll define some parameters around the economic return and the things that we're trying to achieve, but fundamentally, don't come back and ask me. You have the power to do this. And so, to do that, what I really felt was necessary was we had to find some sort of simple anchor concepts to when I tell people that they're like, "Oh yeah, that sounds great." And yeah, if you turn your teenage kid loose with a credit card, God only knows what's going to happen. So what we leaned into was the concepts in the book Extreme Ownership. So we felt like the tenants in that book, as I've met Jocko and Leif early in their careers before they were the celebrities they are now, and they resonated with me. They're so simple. And so those were the calls, the markers that we set as we built our team and said, these are the tenets we're going to follow and we're going to believe in. The buck stops with you. It is about extreme ownership. And now go do this. And then when you wrap that in the compensation structure of market-based pay that grows as you grow your fleet, a bonus that's solely based on your location's performance, not some corporate allocation or corporate overlords, and then equity in the business, it drives tremendous performance and adherence and results.
I mean, all I can say is like, I literally have no words for a couple reasons. One, that is amazing. And two, I follow a very similar process in my business. So, I mean, that means like, I'm on the right track, seeing your success and growth. And I have personally, I don't know about if you have met other CEOs or people who have strategized. I've never seen anyone say this thing. And this honestly, like to me at least, it fully explains the path of growth. And because I guess like the biggest problem here is like you said, like the corporate structure, etc. And I always hated it.
Mm-hmm.
So I never so right after college I had opportunity to get my dream job, like like you wanted to be a partner
Yeah.
in Arthur Anderson, I wanted to be one in Deloitte or KPMG, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and I just didn't do it. I could not even like take my full job there because it just didn't make sense to me, even like early on, like early in my career. And I took up a very small project in a small town in India where I had to set up a entire manufacturing unit.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of excited me. I think I was underqualified at the time, but I ended up doing. The CEO helped me a lot. He also mentored me. So yeah, I mean that was a crazy experience. But so coming back to that, like shifting gears a little bit, since a lot of the audience who listen to this, they are actually warehouses, so more on the
Yeah.
3PL side.
Mm-hmm.
So talking about like because obviously in this whole journey, because warehouses including 3PLs are your primary customers as well, and also your partners, so I'm sure you talk to a lot to them and you're trying to solve a problem for them.
Mm-hmm.
So from your experience, like where in the whole process you have seen like that whole breaking point, if you
Yeah.
may, that like like where do you see that they get stuck at a certain revenue point at, and what does it like look like operationally?
Yeah. I think time and time again, we see that the break point is almost always at space in dealing with space, whether the dock doors are backing up or trailers are stuck in the yard, drivers are waiting. The flow breaks because there's no place to stage product. All right. And then ultimately the costs show up when you're paying overtime or detention fees or demurrage. And so I see operators consistently kind of misdiagnosing that as a labor or a carrier problem. So they add a shift, maybe they add another 3PL, they add a TMS, but none of it solves the constraint. It's really not physical, it's procedural. And so, the right question isn't really how do I move the product, if you will, I guess. It's where is the weight happening? What is that costing me per hour? And oftentimes, kind of operators can't answer that question. And then I think the other thing that sometimes I see people struggling with is that they look at operations when it's calm. And you don't learn anything from calm operations. You learn from the worst hours, the worst shifts. That's where the real system shows up. So to me, I think, as an operator, I always found my way into a third shift kind of operation or something to make sure that I was there, eyes and ears, boots on the floor, really understanding where the worst of it was happening, even if it was the third shift.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we were chatting last week, and when you explained me your entire model and the even the costing and everything behind it, I mean, immediately what I was thinking was it is so common, especially for 3PLs, that they need to expand, but they cannot take the risk either. So for instance, let's say I'm in 100,000 square feet facility. Now I have this one client which is needing 25, 30,000 square feet, let's say approximately, for pallet positions. Now obviously I cannot just magically add 20,000 square feet. I have to either add a warehouse or get a bigger one. Now the question is, okay, if I do, even if I trust this deal, I cannot really get a 20,000 square feet warehouse. I'll get a 50,000, whatever the break even point is of the math. Now this whole dynamics of spending next few months trying to fill that extra 30,000 square feet space, right? So if I see it the right way to do it is that some people do sublease, try to do that, which is fine. Okay, less commitment, but what about the time, right? Finding that space, getting that done, it's not easy. And this client might go by then, by the time you get done with everything. So, and what if this one anchor client, if you may, that's what everyone calls them, that having an anchor client to start a location, what if that anchor client leaves, right? And especially in the SME space, it may or may not be that much of a big problem. When we look at something like Procter and Gamble signing up a 5-year contract with a 3PL, that's fine. But when we look at the SME space, there could be this e-commerce company doing wonderful, 10 million in revenue, with 500 packages a day, and overnight something can happen, and they go out of business or whatever happens, right? So yeah, it can, because SME market is very fragile, right? So tell me some more experiences around that, because you work everyone, as you said, renting one or two trailers, one off, all the way to Amazon and TJ Maxx, everyone, right? So if you see that small space, what are some of the ways they have utilized wow, in terms of
Sure.
to be able to help them scale, some examples, real life.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a great question. And just hearing you talk about those scenarios and ways to solve it. So, sub renting space or renting a new facility I want the world to understand that, hey, I'm here to help you not have to deal with that. I'm the guy who doesn't need a 5 to 7 year lease. I'm a guy bringing you square footage that's, in some markets 2 to 4 times less expensive than that warehouse square footage. And so, my mission in life is to make sure that all operators know that, I'm your break glass if guy. I got the easy button for you. And so that's what we're about. But to your specific question, I would tell you there's a couple of really great, I think, stories about how people have used us. So there's a global auto manufacturer, one that people would recognize. We literally study their manufacturing processes in graduate school, and some of us that are in operations. So well respected. For 30 years, they've used our trailers in their supply chain. And so, one, that's a heck of a good housekeeping seal of approval. That if those guys have trusted us for that long and haven't found a better mousetrap, it speaks volumes, I think, to what we offer. But the solution is they require their parts suppliers to send everything in reusable packaging. So that's happening. day in and day out, flowing through the supply chain. If there's a disruption of more than 4 hours anywhere in their supply chain, that reusable packaging starts backing up. At that moment, we insert our trailers into their supply chain, and it starts holding and stocking that reusable packaging until the lines and the supply chain can get back into balance and back into synchronization. And so I think that's a real testament to just a very specific use case. In other instances, I've got another plastics manufacturer, and they make all the drinking cups for a restaurant that we all would stop at to get our kids a Happy Meal. And in that process, they know that over a year's time, they have to make X millions of cups, right? And so in the foreign plastics game, it's really about throughput. You optimize your margins by optimizing your throughput, not changing tools over, production lines, and so forth. So they'll try to optimize, knowing what the year's requirement is, their input of raw materials by buying resin at the right price, and then they will produce that entire year's worth of cups unprinted. They load them palletized and shrink wrapped onto our trailers and park them 300 yards from their facility. When that chain calls and says, hey, I need a third of those in the first quarter, they back up the trucks, they run it through their printing operation, they repalletize, load the trailers, park them 300 yards from the facility, and then when the 3PL for the restaurant chain shows up, they cross dock the finished goods into their trailer. Now they've been doing that for 20 years. So again, if it was optimal to build a warehouse to solve that problem or to release more space, they would have gone that route.
Yeah.
What I think they appreciate is one, the unit economics are so favorable, and two, depending on the volumes, they can shift from 700 trailers to 1,000 trailers within a 30-day period. We're there to answer the call. So to me, those are really two really good visuals of how the trailer gets used, but I got a bunch more if we need them.
And I think, like, what I've been thinking since we got connected last week, like, and I think, like, flexibility is probably, like, a very, in my opinion, like a very important aspect, because especially when we look at the SMEs, right? I mean, what I feel is that they treat, like you said, like, in one of your comments, you lightly touched on it as well, like the first one, that they treat, like, space, cost, and, like, process as like separate things, right?
Right.
And everything is, it's like an orchestration in a
Mm-hmm.
way. It's almost like one thing. It's like, four burners on a gas theory, you can say that, or you can say
Right.
four tires of a car, or however we want to
Mm-hmm.
put it. But like, there has to be like a amazing balance between all of that to be able to actually orchestrate in a way that the whole thing should like flow, if you may.
Right.
And like, I come from like core operations, like process background, and does like, I really appreciate what you said there, like, some most of the times when people are looking, they're focusing on like equipment, etc., and space,
Mm-hmm.
but like, what about the process and fitting into that process? Sometimes, more often than not, solutions have to be little bit out of the box,
Right.
because if we are trying to do the same thing we did 2 years back, yeah, I mean, it can work, but it cannot do crazy wonders for you to help you grow like 5x or 10x over the years. So I really appreciate you sharing that. So, like, what are your thoughts around that, like, to going a little bit deeper on it, like, how we touched on like different spaces, like, space, flow,
Yeah.
process,
Absolutely.
etc., cost. So what do you think, like, when a business in general is getting stuck with all these things together,
Mm-hmm.
what is your observation there? Where do they, like, how do they get out of it, I guess, like, to solve the structure, like, maybe more, I guess,
Yeah.
psychologically, if you may, like, not as much as execution wise, but how do they get out of that mind?
Yeah. I would tell you, I guess, I don't know. I try to usually boil things down to be pretty simple. And most operators have three departments solving the same problem in three different ways. And nobody kind of owns the gaps in between, if you will. And the gaps are where the pressure kind of compounds. So if I walk into a typical 3PL or shipper, you got the warehouse manager who owns the space. Transportation manager generally owns, call it the flow, I guess is a word I would use. And then the finance team owns the cost. So three people. They got three different scorecards and three different sets of incentives. And so the warehouse manager kind of solves the number by adding racks and other infrastructure. The transportation manager solves his number by adding carriers. And then the finance team solves their numbers by trying to squeeze both of them. So it's like nobody's paid to solve the gap. Kind of nobody walks the yard at 4 o'clock on Friday and asks, what's this costing us all together? And that's the question I think that gets missed. And to your point, it's when space pressure, flow pressure, cost pressure compound. And then you get to the fourth pressure, which I think is resiliency pressure. You know, that's the day a customer changed a delivery window or the port shuts down or we get some tweet from DC that throws us into some sort of chaos and then the entire system snaps. That's when you can't turn around and grab the binder off the shelf, because that's all fiction at this point. And I think that the message I would say to boards and CEOs is you can't solve a four-dimensional problem with three departments, and somebody's got to own the integration. In my
Mhm.
world, I view that mostly as the chief operating officer, but they're also fighting a lot of fires.
No, I totally agree with you, and I think I would probably add one more dimension to it, and which is sales in this whole process too, right? Like because technically, like when we look at space, anyone trying to sell, like in smaller companies, it would probably be the CEO, right? And they're trying to look at, okay, how much space do I have? How much space will I have to get? And but even apart from space, like there are so many other things. Like, okay, we add on this new customers who need like 10 EDI integrations. I don't know. It could be any different things, right? Like, so generally like having that orchestration between like getting a new client versus how to onboard it also involves, I guess, to your point, like, IT side of people, right? Also the operations guy, like, and then also the finance guy as well. And then there's so many moving parts getting more people, right? Like if I'm suddenly adding a client doing like 500,000 orders a month, and like, in total, my warehouse is doing 3,000 orders a month. Like that's quite a bit of orchestration. And like to your point, like your CEO is that person too, but having that, I guess, like culture, like, and I think it adds up to your point too. Like, so like you said that, for every region you have a CEO. I think of it more like having, like what I generally do is we are a smaller team comparatively. So, and maybe when we are bigger, we'll expand to like a similar model as well. But it's more like every person, be it like, let's say, let's use the warehouse example. So if I was to run a warehouse, right, like every person, be it the picker, be it the supervisor, the more decision making you can give them. So my goal in my company has always been like, doesn't matter who the person is, how can I groom them or train them to be able to do more decision making? That's it. Like, that's what I think day in, day out. I mean,
So one of the
and
things I do when I'm sorry to interrupt you, go ahead.
no, no, go ahead. That's all I was saying. Yeah.
One of the things I do is when you join our company, you get a letter from me called the Ultimate Expectation, and in that everybody you come to work for us, it's in your welcome packet. It's a little box we send you with some swag because I'm about look good, play good, and all that stuff. But the letter talks about how you've been hired to do a job, absolutely. But as long as you're here, there is an expectation that you will act without being told as long as it is in the best interest of safety, our customer, and our team. Don't wait to be told. Don't wait to ask. The ultimate expectation is you have that authority. And so then what I do is within the first 60 or so days, because we're so spread out geographically, we all get on the phone with the new hires. And I share that message with them verbally. We talk about extreme ownership. And at the end of that call, I give every one of those employees my direct personal cell phone number. I don't have a burner. This is the same joke. I say the same phone my wife, my kids, and my mama call me on. And you have the right to call me when you see something that's not being addressed. Now, I'm going to ask you, did you talk to your boss first? Because we need to honor the lines of communication. But ultimately, that buck stops with me. And I want them to have kind of unfettered access to call when they need to. There are people that take advantage of that sometimes and do some things that I probably wish they wouldn't call. But it is what it is. And it's the way I'm going to run this business as long as I'm here. So we start with the ultimate expectation. We build our markets with local market CEOs who are fully empowered to make those decisions and then within their teams through that letter. And then we reinforce it every time we get together.
That is wonderful, John. And I mean, again, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you doing that and also sharing that here. And honestly, again, it goes back to the same thing. I mean, it's very rare to have a culture like that. And in my consulting days, because most of the companies I worked with are like, SMEs, 5 million, 10
Yeah,
million,
yeah.
50 million, 100 million, and most of them family businesses, right? Trying to like, do a generational transfer, etc. So I would kind of like generally come in, help them like with that transition. Oh, like, oh, you are like 65 now, and like now what? Yeah, right. Like, so because they don't have now processes even for that knowledge transfer.
Right.
And when I always like, I can tell you, every damn company I worked with, the biggest problem was this. Even for the smallest decision, like what to, like, to hire, like, I don't know, a janitor, whatever, it doesn't matter. Like any small decision,
Hmm.
it was the owner, like, who had to
Yes.
approve. And this, I'm talking about like a 50, $60 million operation, right? Like
Right.
it's not a small operation to run
Right.
with like, 100, 200 people. How is that humanly possible? It's not.
So,
There, it's there. You cannot do that. First, you are getting exhausting. Second, like, you are putting a ceiling for yourself too, right?
mhm.
Because if for every decision, like, someone is trying to come to me, and so I always say, like, there was this one hire, like this was 2 or 3 years back, and we got them, and this person was supposed to work closely with me. And in 2 months, I realized that they are coming to me for everything, which is fine. Like if it's a prom, but like, I tell them that, hey, like, the whole purpose, the whole culture of our company is that we don't micromanage, right? Like
Right.
we really want everyone to be like a CEO. Like everyone in our company should be a CEO pretty much of whatever they are doing, right? So it is very critical that you need to understand, articulate, get into that decision making, because most people who come from a different culture, it can be a little shocking for them too, right? Like because they are not
Absolutely.
used to, let's say, that feeling of freedom, if you may.
And some
And
don't succeed in that environment. They need the structure, and unfortunately, we've come across that a few times. And we try to get better at our processes and our benchmarking of candidates, but it happens for sure.
I totally agree 100%. So tell me a little bit now about like switching gears here again,
Mhm.
like about your company growth journey in terms of like 4,000 to 36,000. What were some
Yeah.
of the breaking points for you, which you make? I mean, regardless of how good we do it, we all have
Yeah,
some
no, I've
points,
made
right?
mistakes along
So
the way. I used to have hair when I started this, so yeah, absolutely. No, that's a great question, and I would tell you, we've had a very fortunate and blessed run. So not too many mistakes, and none have been catastrophic. So knock on wood, we're good there. The thing I think that we've learned along the way is we probably have to be quicker to fire. Quite honestly, we're very thoughtful in our hiring processes, but we oftentimes struggle with taking too many chances to help someone get along and get up to speed with how we do things. Our business is extremely simple, um, tactically speaking, and there are just some core tenets that you can see the KPIs. Is it working or is it not working? And so that's probably been one of the things as we've scaled. We've had to figure out better ways to identify the issues, give that one shot to make it right. But then otherwise, we need to move on because of the trajectory and the speed of our growth. As I mentioned, we've grown through 25 add-on acquisitions, and they're oftentimes those businesses you described a few minutes ago. It's the 65-year-old founder whose children don't want the business or have other interest in life and things like that. And so they don't have an exit strategy. And so that's really where we've come in and become the acquirer of choice. It's a great story. When we first started this, as people would we would buy their businesses, part of the requirement was they had to reinvest with us, had to roll some equity. It was kind of a risk management strategy on our part to make sure that we're getting the business we thought we were getting. Because a lot of them would show up kind of with the shoebox full of receipts. And so you were trying to figure out exactly what you had here. Um, and I'm so proud to say that those guys in the early days, they literally got a greater financial reward when we sold the business in 2021 than when we bought the business originally from them. And so, we were building true value for their families and their legacies. And so I'm very, very proud of that. And I would tell you, of the 25 acquisitions, I'm comfortable in saying 24 of them would be references for us. I got one guy who didn't understand non competes and started renting trailers like 2 weeks after close. So that was a little bit of an issue. But yeah, it's something that I take great pride in, and it's part of why we've been able to grow at this pace. And I think when you've got the strategy and the org development side right, and you have some baselines, and you're really clear on expectations, and you don't keep changing it, it's not a flavor of the month. And then when you treat people well to the point where they'll be references for you even after you buy their companies, I think that speaks volumes to why we've been able to do what we do.
So, trying to wrap my head around what you just said. So, you said like you will acquire that, you acquired and then sold again. So, like, I didn't
Yeah.
catch that part. So,
Yeah, and I skipped it probably in the evolution. So we started in 2021, myself and a small group of investors. I'm sorry,
yeah.
in 2017, late 2017. In 2021, we sold the business to a private equity sponsor. I
Okay.
reinvested with the rest of the management team, and then now we're under kind of new ownership, if you will, with us all having a seat at the table from an equity standpoint. And I think at some point, maybe in 27, we'll be back in the market again, because it's just the sort of the natural evolution of the business. We continue to grow so rapidly. It's always good to kind of reset the capital structure and kind of grow to that next size of partner in the private equity
Oh, I
space.
see what you mean. Got it. Got it. So, like, some people in 2021, like whoever wanted, they got the exit.
Yes, sir.
So in 2017, when you started, and
Mhm.
then if I am understanding this correctly, this is pretty interesting. So, these family businesses, you acquired some of them, but they kind of like, it was more like a merger kind of scenario, somewhat like maybe they invested some money too in the main company and
We
they got
we took over
equity.
the operation. It was ours to run,
Yeah.
but they invested in the go forward strategy. So
Mhm.
if the number was X millions of dollars, it was X less Y millions, and they got so much cash, and then they got equity in the new business we were building, Warehouse on Wheels.
Got it. Got it.
And then in 21, we took that collective and we
And
sold the
then
entire business to another private equity sponsor, my current sponsor, WinPoint Partners. At that time, myself and 100% of my management team reinvested with WinPoint, because we
got
believe
it.
in the concept, and we're really trying to grow this thing to 100 locations and 100,000 trailers.
That's wonderful. That's a very, very good strategy. I mean, because definitely it helps, like, when you do that way, like, even the companies you acquired, the
Mm-hmm.
whole, like, you said, like, some of them may show up with a shoebox full of receipts. And then also, like, to that point, like what we have been kind of chatting all over is they sometimes don't have processes. So that whole knowledge transfer, etc.,
Right.
is very important. And also it solves for the problem of transition in terms of, I guess, because most times, like, you would say that, oh, like you have to maybe, like, be employed for a year in my company and all that kind of stuff. But pretty
Yeah,
much
we
the
don't
entire
we don't
team,
require that.
yeah, because the entire team technically knows that, okay, this person is kind of leaving, but, like, when they are in the part of the go forward strategy,
Mm-hmm.
the core team of that business has more confidence and generally would be more than likely to stay for the longer term, so
Right.
that's a very important key takeaway here. And so now you said, like, you're probably thinking to another restructuring next year. So I know that you cannot share much, but at a
Mhm.
high level, what's your goal next? Your next goal?
Yeah, so I really believe, with the first group of investors, we were able to 3x the business. We're on the cusp of 3xing the business with this current group. And so then I think that springboards us to the next 3x with the third group. Again, now approaching that sort of 100 locations, 100,000 trailer mark. And then at that point, I mean, who knows? I wish I could tell you, but I'm a young enough man that I got plenty of runway and plenty of energy to keep doing this, and I just love this business, and it's so rewarding too when you talk to our customers, and I got one guy, a pretty big automotive manufacturer, and he said, "John," he said, "you guys know I have problems before I do, and you show up with the solution." And that, man, that you can't be more of a proud papa of all this and what we're doing when you hear things like that. And if you even looked at our customer churn, because we model it almost like software as a service, it is so minimal. We don't lose a flag, if you will, a brand when we get them. Now they may start at 10 trailers and go to 100, come back down to
Mhm.
50 or whatever, because that's the magic of the solution, but we just don't lose that brand once they really come to appreciate the unit economics and the value of that flexibility. Because for me, it's always interesting. Scale looks good on paper, but flex looks good on a bad day, and they are not the same thing. You know, I always say, I tell my customers, don't build the church for Easter Sunday. That's what I'm here for. So when that happens, let me show up with the extra chairs and the extra tent and make sure everybody gets taken care of, but don't build the church for Easter Sunday because I got your back.
No, like, I totally agree with you. And again, like, I cannot emphasize more on this. Like, when someone is growing, flexibility is one of a very, very important factor. Flexibility in multiple aspects, being able to, so same way, like, you just mentioned something about SaaS. So even like, RWMS, like Leanify. So like, we let our people like downsize anytime. You
Right.
can be like 50 users when
Hmm.
you start. You're not tied into the contract. No other software company does that, at least anyone which I know of.
Right.
And tomorrow, if you want to scale down to five, okay, no problem. you know because see, at the end of the day, that's the problem. All the problems which a growing company face, I think, like, given how you have structured everything, including your team members and what you have been describing about your model, I think you strongly believe in this philosophy, which I believe in too, that if your customer grows, you will grow at the same pace, technically.
Hmm.
So essentially, you are empowering your customers to grow with least resistance. Let's put it this way.
Fixed costs too. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, exactly. So they don't
Hmm.
have fixed cost, and like, again, like, not bounding them. Oh, you have to, because I think one of the things you said, that you also allow someone needs it for a day, like, a week or month, doesn't matter. It's not like you said, like going from 1,000 to 50 to 50 to 2,000,
Hmm.
however it goes. So like, having that is the path of least resistance in terms of commitment, and also in terms of their own growth, right? Like, because now this is not a fixed cost to them anymore,
Right.
and it becomes a more like solution investment, let's put it this way, whenever they would do anything like that. So that is definitely wonderful. Wow.
We call it the wow factor. That's why we're proud of it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Now I can see the whole story behind wow. So that's wonderful. So, like, tell me like little bit around the side of that, and this could apply to your business, or I
mhm,
mean, at the end of the day, operations is everywhere, or this could apply to any business, or like more as a person, what you see. So earlier we talked about that, like in terms of where like there's a resilient situation, right? Like, we got, there is a
mhm,
tweet which drives everyone crazy, or something like COVID, right?
mhm.
You said that we cannot take that handbook, it's fiction. I love that statement, by the way, which is absolutely true. And in most cases, even on average day, we cannot take that, like, most of that is fiction in my opinion. But so like, a person, how does that person look like? You said that, who is, I guess, like, able to problem solve in that scenario. Like, think of, it could be a warehouse manager or
Sure.
operations manager, it doesn't matter. How does that person look like? I don't care about designation,
Mhm.
but how does that person look like, who's ready to do that? What are the core values which goes into that person?
Yeah, it really kind of gets back to, we talked a little bit about this, about scale looking good on paper and flex looks good on a bad day. I think when I think about it, those that have built to scale means they can do more of what they already do. And guess if they're built to flex, they can do something different than what we planned for. And I think a lot of operators kind of confuse those two things because documented resiliency in a binder, okay, it has playbooks, what contact list, org chart for the day that, hey, the hurricane hits or whatever the plan is. But operational resilience is like muscle memory. So it's like it's whether the dock supervisor at 4 o'clock on Friday actually knows what to do without reaching for the binder, that muscle memory, I'll call it, and you can tell the difference by what happens on a bad day. So for me, I've seen documented operations run to the binder where resilient operations just really run the play. They just they react. It's like that athlete that practices and practices and practices for that one moment in time that's going to really make or break the situation. So resilient operations in our world kind of have slack on purpose, whether it's slack in space, time, cash. I mean, I would think some people hearing this probably think, well, slack looks like waste on a P&L. And I would say, well, it's really not waste, it's insurance for the day you need it and when you can't buy it. So I think about my customer that needs me to be on call. So when that reusable packaging starts backing up at their lines, that's the slack that we've helped them build with the service we provide. And so I think that's where kind of the board lens matters. I mean, boards, they kind of reward efficiency. So efficiency removes slack. And so really boards have to they sort of systematically sort of erode the resiliency in the operations that they're responsible for. And, so a port closes and they ask why, nothing can happen, why we didn't process it right. I mean, they have to look in the mirror. It's back to extreme ownership.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think that's a very simple way to put a complex scenario. I love it, but definitely absolutely true. And I was actually trying to ask more around like an individual, right? Like, let's say I'm
Sure.
hiring someone.
Hmm.
So I'm thinking, trying to understand because you have very amazing core values. I'm trying to learn a little bit here that
Sure.
I'm hiring someone. How do I hire that person? What do you look for in that person
Sure.
when you hire? Let me be very specific.
Yeah. So I would tell you that I ask two fundamental questions in every interview. The first is describe to me a situation in the last 90 days where you went home from work and you thought to yourself, this is why I do this. This was a good day. And be specific. I want to know the situation. I want to know your role. I mean, don't sugarcoat it. And it's such an off the wall kind of question. Most people don't have a canned answer. And then I flip the lens and I say, okay, now you tell me in the last 90 days about a bad day when you went home and you said, I do not want to deal with this. This is not what I signed up for. And what I find in those situations is if the good day is all hell broke loose, forgive my choice of words there, and we fought the fight and we won the battle and this was cool and I was into it, that's great. If the bad day is all hell broke loose and I wanted to go hide in my office and I wanted to you start to understand those people that embrace the storm, kind of the buffalo mentality. You go towards the storm instead of the cow where you walk away from the storm and you have to endure the pain longer. And so for me, I want that buffalo mentality. I want that person that's going to run into the storm and embrace the chaos because I don't know about you, but at no time in my career have things been more chaotic between geopolitical instability, between the next tweet from our silent partners in DC to any number of individual issues within your own business that just happen in the normal course. It it's complicated out there and people are struggling and stressed, and that's again why I'm all about this Ritz-Carlton mentality in our service, because that person on the other end of the line is dealing with things that we had no comprehension for at this point in our conversation, our relationship. And all I want to do is I want to bring them some semblance of relief.
No, I totally agree with you. Like, obviously, like, especially last 6, 7 years have been pretty crazy. And I was just thinking that, you even did the restructuring in 2021, right?
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
and I started Leanify in 2020. It
Hmm.
was actually like literally like 2 months before COVID hit. And that time I was re-strategizing my first company, totally pivoting it because I was starting the second one. So I
Right.
was going to focus more on that. So I mean, that's just
Way
one
more
of the things.
valuable than any MBA you could have earned right there. You've lived it.
I mean, believe it or not, like, a lot of people don't know this, and I don't mind like sharing this because I do feel that there are people who are in the this growth phase, especially like, again, emphasizing that whole SME space. They feel like, that they are doing something wrong, but it is not, right? Like, there are so many moments because see, the ground reality is everyone looks at success. I mean, and there are 10,000 quotes about it, right?
Yes.
But there is no one out there telling that, oh, there was this moment where I almost like went bankrupt,
Yeah.
like there have been nights where I literally like cried as a man, and
Mhm.
I'm not shy to even admit that, like, because
Sure.
it's a reality of it, right? Like when you are trying to build something which is unconventional, it is not easy. There's
Right.
so many challenges, and like for me, I went a very different route. Like I was pretty much confident that I'm not going to involve any investors for some reasons, right? So that adds on like a very big burden as well,
Absolutely.
because I mean, I'm the last one to be paid for sure.
Yes, sir.
And then, like, all the people, pretty much their entire family is like, is dependent on me, which I
Mhm.
think, like, even CEOs who have investors, they think like that, the good ones. But at the end of the day, what my point is that it's too much pressure, and, but going through it, when I look back 4 years back, it was all worth it. So just being persistent and, yeah, so like, you sharing that, like, reminded me a little bit about bad times which I had.
Yeah. Yeah. And please understand, we've felt this freight recession and what I think is truly an industrial recession in this country in the last 18, 24 months. I mean, our services generally don't intersect with data centers or chip
Mhm.
building or big pharma. It's just not what we do. And because of that, we've been weathering the storm with our friends in automotive, with our friends in the plastics space, with our friends in, certain aspects of retail. And so, yeah, it's still been a challenge. There were the COVID highs, and then there were what I would call this freight industrial recession lows, and I believe we found the bottom of it, and we're coming out of it now. Our latest conflict in the Middle East, I think, has only complicated our lives, especially those of us that are in and around transportation. So, but again, it is what it is. I mean, they're still first world problems at the end of the day because so many other people are suffering and have so many other challenges. I have this little saying. It's written. You can't see it, but I have windows here in my office, and
Yeah,
at the very bottom, where no one else can see it, is some
yeah.
letters NCWH. And so when I'm sitting in here and I'm feeling all glum and I'm thinking, woe is me, and why can't I get people to do what I want them to do, or why aren't customers renting more trailers? And I turn and I look out the window to enjoy the landscape of this office, and I look down that corner and it reminds me, nobody cares, work harder. And I
Nobody
really
cares.
nobody cares, work harder. And I just have those little four letters written down there. Again, it's not for anybody else because I that's not for any that's my reminder that, hey, big boy, your problems are first world problems. Get the heck over it and let's get on with it. So anyway.
I love it. I'm going to put that on my desk too. Like, I love that quote. So like what I have right in front of me is like, if you are able to sleep at night not thinking about what you're doing, then you're not building something bigger which you were thinking of building. Like, so similar, I
Yeah.
guess, concept. But but yeah, like, John, I know that you have to rush to another call. I can probably go on for another 2 hours.
Well, I
I
would
want to
enjoy that,
learn.
but my schedule won't allow it today. So I've enjoyed this chat though.
Yeah, yeah, you have like, again, NCWS, nobody cares listening to you and me, like, just talk here, talking nonsense pretty much, And I don't think like even like, anyone like goes through the entire 1 hour podcast, but
Sure.
I wish they do, or like, I generally try to put like the important ones out at least. So I'm like, hey, at least like you should listen to this statement,
Sure.
which I will get like a lot out of this one for sure.
Well, thank you.
So I really appreciate you, John, hopping on today and being with our guests. And hopefully, very, very soon, I would like to do another session with you once we have more internal conversations and go a little bit more deeper into some of the things we touched on today, because I think that's a very, very important aspect of growing a company, which a lot of people don't touch on, which you touched on today. So I would definitely love to have you again soon.
Absolutely. Be my honor.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. Anything you would like to share with the viewers before we, I guess, call it off?
Yeah, I think, our conversation today, what I would say is try to run your business on the worst day, not the average day. Because to me, the average day is a lie in a spreadsheet. So let's focus on being able to run it on the worst day, and I think it'll make a lot of those other days way better. So,
Yeah, and
Vikrant, I
also
appreciate it.
average day. Yeah, and average day is for average people too,
There
right?
you go. Exactly. Nobody cares. Work harder.
Love it, love it. That will be the highlight of the this episode for sure.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you everyone if you ended up watching till now, and we appreciate you and thank you so much, John.